Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us again. I appreciate you loyal listeners. If you want to go on to your podcast platform and click like or submit or follow or whatever in the heck button it is that you want to click that brings you all the wonderful updates, I would really appreciate it. I'm working hard on trying to get more listeners and more consistent listeners. So I would really appreciate the help with that if you can. And tell your friends if you like the podcast. I really love hearing these stories of amazing women and the things that they're doing just in their everyday lives. So today we have Hannah Clark. She is a family law attorney. Specifically, she's a divorce attorney. And you would not think that I would be so excited about this conversation, but I am. She is all about empowering women. She's all about helping them through what's got to be the hardest, toughest times of their lives. She's part of a practice where 4 women set up a family law practice, and they're doing it with real deliberate intention of helping grow their staff, the new attorneys that they bring on board, their team, their business, just in a more collaborative, collective way, in a more women-centered and women-empowered way. And I find that so interesting and fascinating and inspirational. And so I really think that you're going to love to hear what she has to say. And if you wait until the very end, she gives you one last piece of advice, probably the very last thing she says, which I think is gold. So hang on till the end. Let's get started with Hannah Clark. Good morning, Fearless Females. So we are here today with Hannah Clark. She is the founder and managing attorney of the Reputation Law Group. And I'm really excited. Hannah and I have a lot in common. Like we got together and kind of started chatting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to talk to you and have you share your story. So thank you so much for doing this for us, Hannah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, when we first met, it was just like thing after thing. It was proving that we were so like-minded, which I loved.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of places we connect with empowering women and kind of helping them. So I love that. I'm sure our listeners are going to really enjoy our conversation today. So my first question is always my favorite, and they say it's the hardest one, and I think it probably would be for me too, but I love books. I love reading. What is your favorite book?
Yeah, let's start off with the tough question. I read a lot. I have a goal every year, so it was actually just really hard to choose my favorite book. My favorite personal book, so not professional, would be Lessons in Chemistry. Have you read that? Oh, it's so good. It's got a female main character who's trying to make it in a man's world, truly. And so it's really, really empowering. And then it also has a narrator. Her pet dog is one of the narrators you hear from. And I had never seen an animal as a narrator, and I'm a dog person. So it's hilarious. It's empowering. Highly recommend.
It doesn't have anything to do with chemistry, though, does it? Because I really don't even understand chemistry.
Luckily, I don't have to. So she's a scientist, and she kind of is teaching women how to cook, but the chemistry behind it. And I think it's set in like the 60s. So again, nobody thinks she can make it in chemistry or anything else for that matter, really. And she builds a career. It's really cool. I love that book. And it's a TV show now too. So for you listeners who don't want to read, just watch the show.
Yeah, I love that. I love it when they make it into both. And then I've got like books and shows to binge for a while. So that's always great.
Right. So I wanted to throw in too my favorite professional book, if you don't mind. I mean, it's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I feel like a lot of books in the business realm sometimes they just seem so obvious, sort of like common sense. And I have never learned as much from any other book as that one. And I think it's especially important for women who own businesses. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, that was one of my must reads when we started, building out a team. I love that book. I think it's great. And I think it's a nice, easy, quick read, but it teaches you a lot. And I've read it several times. Like you go back through it and write down your ideas of things like, oh, I need to remember this. So if you haven't read it recently, it bears repeating even.
Yeah, and it is a quick read. I read it on a plane ride and I learned so much. And I found it interesting that the author is a man, but he actually has the leader in the book as a female. And I think it works really, really well. So, yeah, that's another recommendation of mine.
Yeah, I love it. So tell me a little bit about your journey, Hannah. How did you get started? Did you know what you wanted to be early on? How did that journey take you? And what do you do today? Just a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I am a family law attorney, and now I also own my own family law firm along with 3 other female partners. We actually just started this firm in February, and it's been quite the journey to get here, I will say. I didn't always know I wanted to be an attorney. I think some attorneys sort of have a family full of them, right? And so the writing's on the wall. I didn't really even know any growing up. I was a financial planning major in undergrad, hence one of the overlaps for me and Lorie. And I didn't know what to do with that, to be honest. And so some of my professors mentioned possibly going to law school. At the time, they thought it might make sense to match the law with financial planning and become an estate planning attorney. But I went to law school. That's what brought me to Colorado. I went to CU Boulder. And to be honest, estate planning was just a little too boring for me.
Oh.
And here I am divorcing people, which is really juicy. So no happy medium. I took a clinic in law school in family law, and I just fell in love with it because you are working with people all the time, right? Nonstop, almost like people's therapist. Of course, not that I am a therapist and don't hold myself out to be, but it's awesome to be involved in people's lives and truly feel like you're making a difference. So that's all I've ever done. I graduated law school and I stuck with family law. I worked at 2 firms before starting my own. And like I said, we just started the Reputation Law Group in February, which it's time has flown. It's been so fun, so excited. We're busy. Yeah, so that's sort of what brought me here.
And when you set up the Reputation Law Group, you decided deliberately to keep it women-based, women-owned. What's that like? Is that different? Is it a different vibe than you're used to? Is it something? Just tell me about that. I've never.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, the law is mostly male driven. Both of my previous firms, the owners were men. And in both of those firms, the owner wasn't actually practicing law anymore. They just owned the law firm, but they weren't sort of boots on the ground, if you will. And so I actually forged my way into being a managing attorney at both of those firms. So not only did I continue to practice the law, but I got to manage employees and train people and be a mentor. And so at my last firm, 2 of the women that I ultimately trained and mentored are now 2 of my partners. And I think the 4 of us, the other one being my other managing attorney, the 4 of us just knew we could do something different. And that we could make a bigger difference in the lives of our employees and the lives of ourselves, as well as the lives of our clients. Not necessarily just by being women-owned, of course, but sort of having that empathy and that insight into what it's like. I think a lot of clients, actually both male and female, tend to do better by having a female divorce attorney. I think men can do better because we can have sort of that soft touch that is sometimes needed. And I think women can do better because we get it. We get them. And sometimes I would say male attorneys can't necessarily empathize as much. So it was intentional. The 4 of us left our last firm and started this one. And I think it makes a difference every day in again, the lives of the clients and the lives of our employees.
How do you, I'm just curious because this is so interesting to me. How did you set it up differently, or where do you feel, is it just like, you understand moms need time off to pick up kids from school, or is there a deliberate processes and procedures that you've put into place to be more friendly towards women?
Yeah, I think sort of knowing how much they've got on their plate, not only women with kids, right, but even women without kids just tend to carry a bigger mental load. I think we all have heard a lot about mental load lately. And I also find that being a divorce attorney right now is a really interesting time to do it. When I started my career, a lot of women didn't have their hands in the finances. They had never paid a bill. They maybe were a stay at home, not the breadwinner. And that takes a certain level of care as a divorce attorney for a wife or a mom that's never done the financials, right? But what we also have is we're seeing obviously a giant increase in women who are the breadwinner, women who are the financial planners and the investors, which is amazing. But that also takes a special type of care from a divorce attorney. And so I just don't think we've seen as much change amongst men going through divorces as we have for women. And because it's changing so much, at the same time, I can be representing the stay at home mom while also I'm representing a female CEO making millions of dollars. And so, yeah, I believe both types of women fare better with that woman attorney.
Yeah. And that is so interesting. We're seeing that in finance as well. Just this upsurge and upswell of women who are taking control of their financial future because they are the primary breadwinners. The generation before us kind of broke a lot of those glass ceilings, and we're now fully entrenched in some of those places. And so it does take, it's a different way of navigating the world when you're not in this traditional 1950s family with the guy goes out and makes the money, the woman stays home and doesn't ask, how he's investing or how he's spending or anything like that. So I find that interesting that we're both dealing with that in different aspects of women's lives. And it does take a different kind of energy to kind of navigate and help with that transition for them. So tell me, Hannah, what is the best investment you've made in yourself? As you kind of look back over your journey, can you think of something where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did that because it's made just all the difference in my life?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, forging my way into a management role at both of the law firms I previously worked at was the best thing I've ever done. It set me up to be able to start this business and run this business. I don't think I could have done that if I didn't understand the budgets and the employee issues and insurance and malpractice and all of those things. It also made me realize my strength as a manager. I love having sort of a mixed workload, if you will, where part of my day is as a manager, part of it is as an owner, and part of it is just as a practicing attorney. I think all of those things sort of educate the other. And so I think it's given me confidence. I think it's helped me understand financials even better. And yeah, it's given me the sort of leverage to do something like this, right? To start my own firm, which is the best decision I've ever made.
Mm-hmm. So how did you work yourself into that, man? Was it just no one wanted to take that and you're like, oh, sure, I'll take it? Or is it like, did you have to raise your hand more often or be seen? Like, how do you get into that management?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. A lot of people are like, I don't want to be a middle manager. How is that your goal? So this might not be for everyone, right? But I just found myself managing anyways, without the role or the compensation, right? Without the title, without the compensation. I just can't stand by and see an inefficient process or an unhappy employee or a lack of training. And so I found myself managing anyways. And so I started to ask for the title. I started to ask for the compensation and the time to be able to do it, right? I couldn't have a full caseload while also managing. And that took a lot. And neither firm had ever had that role before. So we were also sort of carving our way into that and having to convince this owner, you need this role, and here's why it's vital, and here's what I'm already doing. And so, yeah, it's not something I just applied for, right? It's sort of like I had to make my own way. And it set me up for what I'm able to do today.
I was thinking that just the other day, honestly, as I was putting something together for my business. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like things that I did 5 and 10 years ago as I was coming up through the ranks have really prepared me for things that I'm doing today. And there's no There's no sense of I'm not good enough or I don't know how to do this or anything like that because I've practiced these skills for 10 years. And
Yeah.
so that idea of like maybe volunteering, maybe taking on roles, and that's a really hard thing to manage when you're a woman and you're carrying a lot of the load anyway. But taking on roles that allow you to manage the practice really does set you up to, if entrepreneurship is where you're kind of headed. But I don't know anyone that says no, we don't. We don't want you to do that. We don't need you to do that.
Yeah, the help. Yeah, it's like, listening to seeing what you are a natural at, right? Like listen to that. And then also understanding what you're passionate about, because both of those things are really true for me when it comes to management. But I had to listen and sort of act on that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, Hannah, what is the worst advice someone's ever given you? I always love this question because I get some that I'm just like, I can't believe someone even told you that. But what is the worst advice you've ever gotten? And did you take the advice or did you ignore it? What did you learn from it?
I know the audacity of some people, right? Giving you horrible advice. Honestly, I think the worst advice I ever heard, which I did not take, luckily, was do not go to law school. Somebody told me that. They said, you're going to owe a lot of money and you're never going to make enough money. And so all that did for me was give me anxiety, crippling anxiety, but I didn't listen to it. And now it's great with hindsight to look back and see that my career has worked out. I actually paid off all my student loans early. I wish I could tell that person that. Of course, law school is not for everyone, but all that did for me was it was a negative take and it caused the anxiety. And I didn't need that in my life, right? And it took a while to get over, but it all worked out and I'm glad I didn't listen.
You must have been pretty young when you got the advice, right?
Yeah. I went to law school straight from college. So I was 21 years old. And, I was also about to go to law school. Like it was already happening. So to be told don't go when things are already sort of set in motion, just isn't helpful, right? I think there can be more critical thinking advice, even if you don't take it. But this was just it was moot, right? It wasn't helpful. It really was just negative.
Yeah, that's hard. It's hard when people are raining on your parade when you're already a little bit nervous about making this big step anyway, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm always nervous for big steps like that. And so I was already nervous. I was already anxious. Law school was a whole other animal. And I was young. Some people go have a career before they go to law school. And I was straight from college. And so I was impressionable. But again, I think it also comes back to listening to your gut. And if that piece of advice seems to only be sort of negative, right? And no real critical thinking went into it, then probably ignore the advice.
Yeah, that's a good example to use. If it's just negative with no critical thinking behind it, maybe don't pay attention to that advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about regrets? And I'm not going to say regrets exactly, but like if there's situations that you would do differently if you could go back and do them again. Like if you could go back, you're like, oh my gosh, I know so much more now. I would handle that completely differently.
Well, I would say if there's any younger listeners out there, I do regret maybe not studying abroad or taking a year to figure life out, to really see what the real world is like, right? I felt so much pressure and it was I was putting my own pressure on myself, but I just felt so much pressure to get the education, do it well, get the career, do it well, and I think sometimes life is short, right? So it's okay. You don't have to figure out what you want to do when you're 18, when you're 21. So I guess that would be for the younger listeners. In terms of my own regrets professionally, I think I just wish I had been confident enough to start my own business earlier. And, I like that you said maybe it's not actually a regret because everything sort of worked out perfectly. So I can't necessarily say that I should have done this any earlier. But because it's gone well, because it's been so fun, and I was so scared of doing it, I look back to prior Hannah, younger Hannah, and I'm like, you could have done it. But again, everything has the right timing and everything's worked out. So not necessarily a regret, but yeah, don't, work on that confidence, I guess is what I would tell prior Hannah. She could
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. That's it. It is hard because you come at this and you're looking at this big business and you're like, but what if I fail?
Mhm.
And what if I can't do it well? And what if things go wrong? And what if? And you kind of, I think you wait until all of those questions are like 90% in the yes column before you take that move. But I too have found looking back that I'm like, why wasn't I braver a little bit earlier? Like, why didn't I make that move just a little bit earlier? And
Yeah.
I don't know whether it would have turned out, but how would you have the confidence or find the fearlessness to make that move just a little bit earlier?
Yeah, it's a valid question. I think in most of my major moves in my career, it's been almost like I have no other choice. Like it's gotten to the point where I'm like, I just have to do this at this point, which is good because it's really, really, really motivating. But it's less time to plan. It's sort of like maybe taking an affirmative action instead of getting to a place of like, well, at this point, this is just what I need to do. But it worked out. So no regrets, I suppose.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on that. Kind of looking through and saying, could you have been a little bit more proactive instead of reactive to like getting in the situation, like you said, where I've been there too, where there's just no other option. You're like, I have to do it because the alternative is miserable. And so, but like planning forth and kind of making goals and setting, guidelines for not getting to the place where it just has to happen. I don't know. I haven't taken that road yet. So maybe that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
If you could look back on your journey and you could high five yourself for one really great financial decision that you made, what would that be?
I'm scared to answer this because you're the financial planner. So you're going to be like, no, that wasn't good. Um, Honestly, purchasing my first house, which is now a rental, and I have purchased a second house that I live in. It was a little bit of a stretch to do so. And times were different, right? Interest rates were lower. So it's hard to even say this because other people might be in a really different situation given real estate now. But purchasing that tiny little first house, it felt scary because it was a little bit of a stretch financially for me. But man, has it worked out. And I got in when things sort of before they got worse. And so that's provided some security for me. And so I think that's one of the best financial investments I've made.
Yeah, that's a really great one and a good example. I have some of my kids where I'm like, they're just barely purchasing their first house and they're really young. Do you know that first house purchases now are on average, I think in Colorado, between like 36 and 42 years old before
Wow.
you purchase your first house?
It makes sense. Things are so expensive. And, we see this in our cases a lot too. Like it really affects a divorce because nobody wants out of the house because the interest rate on the new house or refinancing this house is going to be insane. And so it puts so many people in a bind. So I'm not surprised. It's really sad, but I'm not surprised, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love watching those young adults as they get into their first house because it really is a way to kind of build wealth and grow. So that's neat. I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
What scared you the most when you started out on your journey? And does it still scare you today or does it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to when I graduated law school and took my first job, and literally being handed cases is like being handed people's lives. They're in your hands. And, I'm not a criminal defense attorney where literally somebody's life is on the line, right? But in a divorce, I mean, we're talking about parenting time and kids, how do we make decisions about the kids and what, is there domestic violence going on and somebody's entire retirement is at stake, everything they've worked for. So I do feel like people's lives were in my hand. So as a baby attorney, I just did not have the confidence. I really didn't. I was scared to give legal advice because I just hadn't seen everything I needed to see. And so the confidence was lacking. And so, I mean, what I did for that was I just would double check with people who knew more than me. always talk to somebody smarter than you. And that's what I did. And so my confidence really, really got there probably after, probably a year and a half, 2 years in family law. That's when I really hit that stride. And of course, ever since then, my confidence in my practice of the law has only grown, right? The more you see, the more you know, the better at it you get. And as a divorce attorney, you really have to have enough confidence to kind of tell your clients how it is. You need to steer the ship. And so you have to be confident enough that even though they're telling you they want 100% of the parenting time, you have to be able to tell them that's not going to happen. Setting expectations, steering that ship. And so when I am training baby attorneys, I tell them, I promise you, once you hit that confidence stride, your life gets so much easier. Obviously, client services get better, but also just your work-life balance, your stress level, all of that gets much better. So I'm glad I went through that, and I can use it as a, sort of a training for other younger attorneys going through it.
And do you tell them just to ask a bunch of questions, or is there any shortcut to getting confidence? Because, that idea of imposter syndrome or not being good enough, or that comes up over and over and over again in young people's, career journeys. How do you get past that stage? I know you can't necessarily skip it, but is there ways to get past it faster?
Yeah. And, some people just get it faster than others. A lot of people burn out of family law. It's tough. It's a tough job to have. And some of those people, I think, burn out before they've reached that confidence, that stride I'm talking about, which is always sad to see because maybe they would have gotten there. One person I trained wanted to read every single word of every single statute and law. And that wasn't how I learned, but that is how she learned. And her confidence went way up after doing that, right? Because she felt like she knew the statute at any given moment. She could cite it. Other people just need to observe a lot. They need to know that it's okay to tell an opposing counsel, absolutely not, right? They need to be able to tell a client and set those expectations. So I think some people learn in different ways. Mine was really when I realized I needed to do some client control, right? And then I had the smarts to do that. And so I think that made me be able to control the case a little bit more, which gave me even more confident. It self-cycled, right? Yeah, I think, and not everyone is made for family law. And so that's okay too, right? Some people do a career change and, they never did get that confidence level. I think for people looking for divorce attorneys, you need to be talking to an attorney who comes across as comfortable and confident, not confident, arrogant, right? I think part of confidence is saying, I don't know the answer to that, or I don't know what a judge would do in this circumstance. It's complicated. But you've got to feel comfortable with your attorney and have that confidence in them in a non-arrogant way.
Yeah. I like that. And I like that most of the examples that you gave are things that you can do. They're things you have control over. You go ahead and watch, go sit in on somebody else's trials and watch how they do things. You read the books, you read the statutes, those sorts of things. Those are all things that you can do yourself. It's not up to somebody else. It's up to you and how much effort you put into it.
Right. And having a good mentor or somebody good that's training you. Again, part of forging myself into a management role was partly seeing that the new attorneys coming in, didn't get training. I didn't get much training. I was kind of thrown to the wolves. And so wanting so badly to train people, to get them to that confidence level faster, because otherwise we're going to lose them as a firm. So not only is it in our best interest, it's in this person's best interest, our client's best interest. So we at the Reputation Law Group rely heavily on very in-depth training. A lot of firms don't do that, right? Because when somebody's training, they're not billing, but that's not all that matters. So we invest heavily in training, and I think it can get people there quicker.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, I do a class on Fridays, and I've done it with for years and years now, where I'll take anyone that wants to learn how to pass their 65 or get those licenses. And we'll kind of just do tutoring, because I wanted, I too was kind of thrown to the wolves. Here's your study book. Yeah, we're not going to we're not going to explain any of this to you, but good luck. I hope you pass,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I wish someone could just explain what's going on here or what to expect or just help a little bit. And I love that you emphasize that brings better people to the industry. It helps those people stay in the industry.
Yes.
And it just rises, it floats all boats, right? Everybody gets a little bit better. You get a little bit better because you're teaching these sorts of things. So these questions that these new, young, fresh talent are asking, those are questions that maybe you should have asked too, or that you should know the answer to. So I love that.
The baby attorney that I mentioned earlier who loved to read every single word, it was so helpful. I don't have to read the statute all that often anymore, right? I think I know it. And so she would be like, well, but the statute actually says this. And I'm like, oh, well, no attorneys are using that part of the statute. And so she literally found an angle. And I love what you said, floats all boats, right? It made me get better because she's over here reading every word. She's our expert now. So still love that she does that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so great. And it's great to watch them develop too, as I kind of think of it a little bit, this mentoring idea as just professional parenting, because that's what you're doing. You're kind of just helping grow baby attorneys or baby financial planners into these amazing people that they're going to become, and watching them achieve their goals and dreams. That's really empowering too.
It is. Yeah, it's the best. It really is. We have an associate starting in January. So that'll be our first non-owner attorney at this new firm. And yeah, can't wait. She's experienced in litigation, but to train her in family law, again, will make all of us better. And, then I'm just so excited for her future here.
Yeah. Did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman?
Of course, right? All of us. Yeah, I mean, both in the workplace and in the practice of law. It is historically male dominated. I do think in family law, it's getting better than other areas of the law where I think it still is very heavily male dominated. But just that condescending tone towards female attorneys happens a lot with opposing counsels. And it's frustrating and it's complicated on so many levels. It's personally frustrating. It is also somewhat embarrassing if your client is seeing or hearing this happen, right? We want to be strong for our clients. And so I think when an opposing counsel is sort of being misogynistic, it's awkward to navigate, right? Because you're trying to be professional, you're taking the higher road. You also need to look strong for your client. So it's just a lot to navigate. It's one of the worst parts, I'm sure, of anyone's job as a female, but certainly dealing with opposing counsels that just automatically think they know better because they are a man. It's extremely frustrating. And sometimes it can have an effect on the actual case, which is heartbreaking for clients. That sort of ego, if you will, should not stand in the way of two divorcing people reaching an agreement, for example. But it could, so I don't let that affect my side of the street, but I can sort of see how the opposing counsel maybe is interfering with an agreement that their client actually wants to make. And we're talking about real people's lives. Again, we've got these people's lives in our hands. So it's sad. It doesn't float anyone's boat.
It doesn't make anybody better, right? Yeah.
No.
How do you deal with it? Just, is there a way that you can deal with it? Is there a way that words that you speak or some manner that you have that you're like, kind of put that down? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes I've just got to act like I just have to ignore it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look for the substance in their email. What are they actually talking about as it relates to the case? And are they right? And if they're not, I am pointing that out. Probably each of my partners would agree that there maybe has been one or two times in our career where we have to email the attorney and say, this was inappropriate. Don't speak to me like that. It's not helpful to the client. whatever the thing is. So, and as professional as a way as we can, but every once in a while it reaches a level that is just so unprofessional that it needs to be called out. If I was doing my own divorce case, I think I could say a lot more, right? But because I'm really just a client's agent, I just try not to meet it at all. I try not to go there at all. I just look
Mhm.
for what will actually keep the case moving forward from this email and let me focus on that.
Mhm. Mhm. That's interesting. It's a hard thing to navigate, and you have to navigate it in all sorts of different industries. So
Mhm.
it's interesting, and it's kind of sad, isn't it? A little sad that still in 2025 we get the bad actors that come at us with that kind of energy.
Oh, yeah. And when I was, first starting as an attorney, I thought I mean, it was extra hard because I was younger and a female, right? So I think it's gotten a little bit better just because, now I'm starting to have wrinkles and stuff. um, but it still exists, and I don't know if it'll ever go away. So I think we just have to maintain our professionalism and being reasonable and knowing what we're talking about. Sometimes it seems like it's coming from places they don't know what they're talking about. And instead of admitting that, they're sort of doubling down. So maybe it'll already always exist. Maybe it'll get better. It is, part of that is just having more female family law attorneys. That alone just helps.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Hannah, what is the thing you are most proud of?
Uh, Honestly, starting this business, it just feels like my baby. I recently went to a wedding and I was gone about a week and I was missing my baby. I love this business, I love what we stand for. And I just didn't have, despite the confidence I've talked about earlier today as a family law attorney, I did not have what I thought was the confidence necessary to start a business because that's not something I always wanted to do. Some people always know that they want to start a business. That's their goal. That was never my goal. But I think in some ways that makes me even a better business owner because it wasn't about ego or just a goal or money. That's not why we started this. So, best thing I've ever done. And I'm so proud because we've done well. And I'm so proud of my fellow co founders. We're able to be friends and have difficult conversations and be successful and listen to each other's ideas. And I think part of that is because we are four women. And so it's been a journey. It's stressful. We're busy, but it really is so fun. And I just never thought I could do it. And here I am. And so I'm very proud of us. It's been the best.
I love that. I love that you're like, it's fun. It's been a journey, but it's fun because I do think that you spend weeks and hours every day and years of your life doing this thing that you call a profession. Like, you gotta love it just a little bit, don't you?
Yeah. And we have to show it love, We remind ourselves because when we do get really, really busy, it's, we don't have time for our owners meeting, or we don't do the retreat we plan to do, or we don't read the book like Five Dysfunctions. We're investing in a business coach. So far, I think we've been good at reminding ourselves that having fun, putting love into the business is all ultimately not only good for us, but good for the business and for our employees and clients. We plan to do this for the rest of our life. So if it's not fun, I don't want to be doing it, right? I mean, we can just go have a normal job and not have the stress of owning a business. So it better be fun, in my opinion. And it's cool that we get to make it what we want. And that's been the best part. We feel so empowered. And I think that had been sort of dissipating for all of us until we made this jump. So,
Is there any tips or tricks you would say for working with a group that you said we're friends as well, but is there anything that you found where there's some sticky bits where you're like, ooh, put this parameter in place or put these rules in place and you can get through those kind of more hard to navigate conversations and maintain friends and fun?
yeah. I mean, part of it is, I think, giving ourselves time to make decisions, right? We will have some difficult conversations. And we started this in sort of a rushed way. And so we threw together a temporary operating agreement. For example, we are spending a lot of time creating a new operating agreement. We're not rushing into that because a lot of difficult conversations come from that. Same thing with compensation. And I'm not sure everyone would do this, but for this first year, we just agreed from the get, we're all dividing all the compensation equally this first year, because everyone's just pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this business, right? And none of us can do it without the other. And so maybe one person's billing the most, but maybe somebody else is the one maintaining our budget, right? And so, or we're coming up with new marketing ideas. And so all of these things are so valuable. So figuring out compensation moving forward is a difficult conversation. We're just giving ourselves time. We are bringing on a business coach, so that should be helpful. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, what we found is our most difficult dysfunction is sort of that fear of conflict and being honest, right? That book was like, you just have to be so honest. And I think women in general don't do as good of a job as this. And it's so sad,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so true. We're told that we're a bitch or overpowering if we instigate conflict, even in a healthy way, right? But bring up an issue that's been brewing, or we're too honest. I mean, we've all heard that. I'm sure all of your listeners have as well. And so it's good to be aware of that. And, we want to overcome that. And so we actively work on it. And it's nice to read a book or have a business coach, because then you can almost rely on that, right? I can say, remember, pursuant to 5 dysfunctions, right? We have to be really honest. So I'm about to bring this thing up. And that gives us some foundation. We also, though, we like taking personality tests and talking about our astrological signs. Again, maybe that's something women like more than men, but I think those personality tests are so telling. And so then when you're dealing with one another, you remember what somebody's Enneagram is, or are they an extrovert or introvert? So much can come from that, and it can help our sort of conflict resolution in our meetings. So yeah, those are some things we've done that are helpful, I think.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I like a lot of the different personality tests, or the different ways we work, the working genius, the DISC profile, like all those sorts of things, because I have an admin assistant, and if you told me as an assistant that I would get to go to a conference, that would be like the best. That would be a really great treat for me. I would love it. For her, it's like her worst nightmare. In person, she's like, I am never going near a conference. Do not send me to any where I have to talk to people, and I think that's it. It's important, because that way I know that's not a treat for her. That's not a positive. That's not something that's going to uplift her. It's something that's going to send her into anguish, so,
Right.
and it's part of my job to know that about her. And so I like that.
Yeah.
I like that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's good to know what really drives people. And we talked about that in the first week of starting this business, was what mostly drives each of us. And, I think it's easy to just project what drives you onto everyone else, because it seems so obvious. Like, of course, that's what keeps me driven. And we all had different answers. And one person's answer, I was like, that would be my last answer, right? Like the thing that drives me the least. And that was their number one. And so knowing that about each other is super, super helpful. It also tells us what our respective strengths are, and we can divvy up responsibilities that way. So yeah, owning a business with 3 other people does not mean it's easy, but I couldn't do it without them. I would so much rather own this with them than on my own. Being a solo is not something I would be interested in. So I love it.
So, well, thank you so much, Hannah, so much for going through your story for us. Do you have any advice for a young lady who might be just starting out on this career that you're already so successful at, to help her be successful?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a few times, but listen to your gut. And maybe that sounds so basic, but it's true. Listen to your gut in terms of, is this the workplace for you? I think a lot of us, it's almost like some of my clients who stay in a relationship too long, right? They may be staying in a workplace that's not beneficial to them, not healthy for them. Listen to your gut about what your strengths are and what your passion is, right? If I hadn't forged my way into the management role, I wouldn't have ever realized that that is what I love. I love it. Maybe more than being a divorce attorney, or maybe equally. So yeah, and hit that confidence stride and just talk to experts. It's okay to say you don't know. I think fake it till you make it is true to a certain extent. You've got to sort of tell yourself to be confident, but I also think it's okay to say you don't know and to find out from someone smarter than you. My advice on a personal level for younger women, or really for any women, is get a prenup. That's the divorce attorney in me, I know, but at least talk to an attorney before you get married. I just cannot express enough. I am now seeing so many women lose some of their estate and their worth that they have invested in and worked so hard for, probably worked harder than their male counterpart for. And because they didn't get a prenup, or because they didn't talk to an attorney before getting married, they are at risk of losing it. So that is like truly my passion project, is making sure women are educated before getting married. You are entering into a legal contract, so take it seriously. Not be the downer.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for spending some time with us and just sharing with us your journey and your story. I've really appreciated it. If I have a young listener who wants to get in touch with you, how does she get a hold of you?
Oh, that would be so awesome. They can find me at thereputationlawgroup.com. They can also email me. It's Hannah, HANNAH, at thereputationlawgroup.com. I'm happy to mentor or to train, or again, to give legal advice. And thanks for having me, Lorie. This was a blast, and you're so good at what you do.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Hannah.
All right, thanks.